as someone who has covered this team as closely and as intimately as you do, from an overall perspective, if you could describe this season in one word, what would that word be?
Weird.
That's a great word.
That is a great word.
Yeah. It's weird. It's absurd. It's odd. It's unexpected. You guys want me to go grab my thesaurus? We keep going.
Oh, okay. So let's drill down on this. Okay.
Wow, Chris Dunn just making a three-pointer for the Utah Jazz.
I do love that Chris Dunn is back. I'm not gonna lie. That did make me smile when I saw that they picked him up. But let's drill down on your word of the year for these Dallas Mavericks of weird. What are let's go with top two, because I don't want to make you have too much here, but what are the top two things that you go, yeah, that made this season really weird?
I think the big thing is just how the season has gone. And nobody expected this season to play out exactly as it did. But, that's kind of boring. The Mavericks are not winning basketball games at the rate that we thought they were. Okay, whatever. A lot of teams do that. You know what's been weird about this season? It's been weird. The weirdness has been how it's played out. There have been losses that never should have been losses. There have been wins that never should have been wins. The Knicks game where Luka scored 60, that never should have been a win. So I've seen Mavs fans complaining about the results that slipped away. They have got some wins they should not have. The Maxi Kleber game winner against the Lakers.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, yeah.
There is almost no scenario where that is ever a win for how the Mavericks played in that game.
Thankfully, Anthony Davis decided to give them free throws for no reason.
Right, exactly. And so there has been just so much weirdness. There has been weirdness just scattered throughout. It's weird that Mark Cuban, out of nowhere, unscheduled, unprompted, thankfully I was at that game early. He started talking 45 minutes before, the first media scheduled availability, the pregame head coach press conference. But Mark Cuban is just like, oh, well, I'm going to talk today. And I just, fortunately happened to be there early and got to argue with Mark Cuban, which is always a highlight of my of any day of mine.
Hold on. You said you argue with Mark Cuban? Because obviously a lot of people on the outside view this as, okay, you ask a question and then you hear what he says. When you phrase it as argue, why do you say it like that? Why were you arguing with Mark Cuban?
I think Mark is I don't think he would refute this at all. I think he enjoys when media members kind of go back and forth with him. I am not. There was a reporter that night that he said, that's BS. That's BS if you believe that. And we were talking about some Jalen Brunson thing. I was not that reporter, but I think Mark is someone who is very open to be challenged, and I think that he appreciates it almost. He appreciates if you engage with him on a level that is not respectful media member, yes sir, no sir. He wants you to go back and forth with him. And so if he is saying stuff that I don't like, doesn't track with me, then I'll be like, Mark, why are you saying this? Like, this doesn't align with this thing. It doesn't align with that thing. Last night's, rendezvous with Mark was not as argumentative as some instances I've had with him, but I enjoy doing it. Genuinely, it is something that I think journalists should, challenge people like Mark Cuban, who are owners of teams. When we feel it's appropriate, when we feel it's the right thing. When we disagree with something that he's saying that feels like it's coming from a specific perspective that is, beneficial to the team, but might not be the truth. And so I always try to do that when it's appropriate, and, certainly I've talked to him over the years and, had disagreements, and sometimes he's on the winning side. I mean, he's a reality TV guy, he hosts a reality TV show. He's good at this, but I also have learned to enjoy it over the years.
Tim Cato, The Athletic, joining us here on the Get Right, covering the Dallas Mavericks here on 105.3 The Fan. Tim, several quotes coming from both Jason Kidd and Cuban, starting with Cuban, and two in particular that I found completely and fairly troubling. Number one, the idea that the take foul has revolutionized the game so much that he missed the boat on how to build a basketball team. And number two, the idea, and don't worry, I put it like this because that's how I thought of it, the fact that Rick Brunson apparently punked Mark Cuban out of signing his son back to this basketball team. What did you just make overall of what Cuban had to say among a variety of things that he talked about last night?
Yeah, I heard the take foul thing, and I actually followed up with him, and I was like, why do you think that the take foul is the reason for, the team sport defense? And I'll put it this way. I'll be blunt. I'm always blunt with you guys. I'm always honest. The follow-up answer that he gave to why the take foul is the reason the Mavs can't play defense this year was no less convincing than the very idea of just bringing up the take foul. That's not the reason. They're bad at defense. They're a bad defensive team. There's a lot of reasons for that that are probably far too long to get into. And so I'll go to the other one. I'll go to the Jalen Brunson thing. I have said this before. I think that Mark is probably right that Jalen Brunson last summer was not interested in re-signing with the Mavericks. But it's a chicken and egg thing. And I've said this before. Did Jalen Brunson feel like the Mavs – so the Mavs basically tried to trade Jalen Brunson or were open to trading him for 2 straight trade deadlines. They did not extend him because they wanted the flexibility to be able to trade him. Mark says that, they didn't have a chance to offer a number that was never communicated. If they did have a number, or if he just knew that the number that he was going to bring to the Mavericks was going to be too much that they were going to spend, then yeah, why would you even bother? And so it's chicken and egg. Did Jalen Brunson give the Mavericks a quote-unquote fair chance to negotiate with what the Knicks were offering him? Probably not. If he had come to the Mavericks and said, here's the money that I'm looking for and that the Knicks are going to offer me, would you guys match it? Would you guys exceed it at this point? Because quite frankly, you've tried to trade me to 2 straight trade deadlines. Were they going to do that? No. I really do not believe that they were. And so, what Mark says about the Jalen Brunson situation is true in a technical sense, but why Jalen Brunson did it and why he didn't even bother, negotiating or coming back to them, I think it was everything that the Mavericks had done to that point that caused him to be in that situation where he's just like, I don't even need to bother.
We're talking to Tim Cato of The Athletic right here on 105 through the Fan. And Tim, you remember you have the reserve, or you reserve the right to plead the fifth and use it at your will here. But between Jason Kidd's answers and, to the media and this Mark Cuban thing, even as he is supposedly trying to take responsibility, do the Mavs have an accountability issue?
I mean, I never plead the fifth.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity if you need to. I'm not going to say nothing bad about you.
Every time I am in the court of law, the many, many, many times that I am in front of a judge, it's just kind of a me thing. Mm-hmm.
I respect it.
Yeah. I love the other amendments, but the fifth one, it ain't for me. I think that I have said this. I have said that Jason Kidd does not take accountability. I don't really know what that means. Does it matter? It does matter. It does matter a little bit. It matters to the fandom and the way it's perceived. It doesn't matter to the locker room. What Jason Kidd goes up and says on the pre- and post-game press conferences and all the times that he talks to the media, he hasn't lost the locker room. I know that people have speculated about that because it feels like there should be a reason that the Mavs have collapsed. There should be something behind the scenes. I really don't believe that there's anything significant behind the scenes that it's caused this season to be what it was, to cause the results to be as negative as they've been. But I do think it matters, and I do agree that Jason Kidd does not talk about the ways that he has, failed to win margins for this team, which is, I think, maybe the most accurate way to kind of say if there's coaching flaws he's had this season, that's the way I describe it. The margins. He's not winning margins. And for Mark Cuban, I mean, he did take accountability in his media session before the game on Wednesday.
He said he took accountability, but then he gave you the Jalen Brunson thing, did he not?
Right. Yeah. I think consistently throughout Mark, what Mark says, there's usually somebody at fault. He might also be at fault, but often, very often, there is a person or a thing or a take foul that is also at fault. That is something I think I've consistently seen throughout many, many, many conversations and quotes that I've, transcribed and read and published from Mark Cuban.
Tim, before we let you go, obviously Jason Kidd had a lot to say last night as well. What was your immediate response when he dropped the expletive about, asking him whether or not he's going to be back or wanting to run it back as Mavericks head coach, and the vibe in the room as he gave his response afterwards?
It was a pretty funny line. I'll give him that. I thought it was defensive. Actually, I take that back. I don't know if it was defensive. I think it was belligerent was the word I used. I published it in The Athletic in my story, this morning, Thursday morning. And I think, so he's very online. He is someone who understands what is being said about him. And I think he feels, and especially because he knows he's going to be back next year, he feels that my impression is that he feels some of the criticism is unfair, or at least he's acknowledging the criticism, and he's like, y'all are going to criticize me, but the team's bringing me back. Why are y'all criticizing me? I don't care. I don't care that y'all are criticizing me because, the team is, I know that my job with the Dallas Mavericks as the coach is secure. So that's more or less how I took it. And, he has referenced things that have been said about him, that has been said about the team so many times this season. And to me, it was kind of very self-referential of things that have been said about him. And he's like, you can criticize me all you want, but I'm going to be back next season. And I'll conclude with this. I don't think that inherently is a terrible thing. I'll say this. I think in the same situation, I might react the same way. Whether a head coach should be doing that, you can make your own conclusions. But I think it was a very human response. But, it was definitely him understanding what has been said about him and reacting as such.
Cato, we catching some playoff basketball once the Mavs are out of this thing?
This team, this entire season, has done exactly the opposite of what I expected them to do. That said, the Thunder are +7, and they're going to, they win this game and they go play the Memphis team that's going to rest everybody. Doesn't look that likely. I still have a deep down suspicion the Mavericks are going to sneak in somehow.
Hey, do you notice that?
It's not best for them. Even if keeping the pick is the best path forward, they're going to somehow sneak in.